Hi, welcome to episode 37 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. I'm Laura, also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog, and this episode's show notes will be over at thecornerofknitandtea.com. I also have an Etsy shop where I sell my handspun yarns, which is the Stash Buckler Adventures in Yarn. Finally, we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea, and if you haven't joined us, you should. There are going to be some upcoming knit-alongs and some prizes and giveaways, so you should definitely join us over there. We're not super chatty, but we do have a good time. So hi, welcome back. It is Sunday, April 27th, and I am ready for another episode of the podcast. If you are a new viewer, thank you for joining me. I hope that you will enjoy. And if you are a returning viewer, thanks for coming back and spending a little bit of time with me. So I hope that you all have had a wonderful week full of crafting. It has been a pretty good week here. The weather has been kind of chilly and rainy, very spring-like, 40s, 50s. We've gotten into 60s some days. I did go out and do some extra walking for my Fitbit this week, but I also had a little bit of tendinitis pop up, so I took a couple days super easy. And so, you know, between the weather and that was inside a little bit and outside a little bit, but it has been pretty nice. And work, my boss was out of town at a work conference, so that was pretty quiet this week, and I did get a little bit of knitting done on my lunch hours, which was very nice. So, and looking forward, next weekend we have another meeting of Mrs. Wilson's Knitting Circle. And then I was super excited to find out that the first weekend in June, there is actually going to be a tea festival here in Kansas City. And there's a small admission fee, but it includes a goodie bag with samples and a porcelain teacup for tastings. And they are going to have a bunch of tastings and a bunch of different tea vendors and some informational classes. And I'm super excited to go check that out. I've never been to a tea festival, so that was kind of exciting to find out about. So I suppose that's really all I have to tell you about this week, so we'll get into the show. Because it's been so cold and rainy, I decided to do a hot tea today, and I was feeling, I don't know, a little fall-like, and so I picked up Harney & Sons Holiday Tea. Now, I had ordered this when it was on sale just after the holidays, and the reason I don't have anything to show you is because it came in this cute little decorative tin, and a friend of mine and I decided to split the tea. So I have a Ziploc bag full of tea bags with no information on it. So I didn't really have anything to show you. I will tell you that Harney's Holiday Blend is a black tea. It's got some citrus, some almond, some cloves, and cinnamon, and I could definitely smell the citrus as I was brewing it. And this is a hand-thrown mug that I got when we went through West Virginia last year. There was kind of an artists collective, I believe it's Tamarack, West Virginia, and we were driving through, and on the way there I kind of looked at it longingly, and on the way back my husband made us stop so that I could pick it up, and I actually picked up some teas, which were so-so, but the mug was a definite find. So again, I'm kind of indulging, even though it's spring, I'm kind of indulging in a little bit of cold, chilly holiday feeling, and enjoying some holiday tea. Ooh, that's pretty good. I definitely get the citrus and the clove and cinnamon. I will say, though, that I might still have to defer to my favorite holiday tea, which is the Downton Abbey Christmas Blend, which I really, really enjoy. I'll have to think about that and test it out again when the holidays come around. So that is what I'm sipping, which brings me to what I'm wearing. This is Daybreak by Stephen West. It is a two-color shawl pattern. And the top is Madeline Tosh Pashmina in the magenta colorway. That's a sport weight merino cashmere nylon. And then it's not merino cashmere nylon. It might be merino cashmere silk. Anyway, pashmina from Mad Tosh, the sport weight. And then the bottom is actually some hand spun, although not mine. When I was first spinning, I caught an update where Squoosh, who is a dyer of yarn and fiber, actually sold some of her hand spun. And this was one of her skeins of hand spun. And I bought it and I hoarded it for a while because it was so perfect and I was never going to be able to spin that thin. And then I created a shawl. So I enjoy this shawl very much. It is in my projects page, and again, it is Daybreak by Stephen West. It is a paid for pattern. I believe it is $6. Nice, just two-colored shawl. Really enjoyed knitting it. Some slip stitches on the sections you can see. Yeah. So that is what I'm wearing, which means it is time to go into what I'm knitting. Last week I showed you some beautiful hand spun by my friend Sarah, the Lime Juicy, and I had pulled it out and determined that I was going to make socks, and it is a sport weight. Parts of it tend towards fingering weight, but it is more sport weight, and it is super cozy and squishy, and I finished my first sock. As you can see, I did not weave in my end yet. I just put it on the sock blocker so I could take pictures because I was so excited because it is so yummy. So this is my standard sock with a rounded toe, fish lips kiss heel. I did go down. I'm down to 52 stitches on the foot on this one. Normally I do 56, but because this was a little bit thicker, when I went up to 56 it was far too big, so I went back down to 52. I also added some simple calf shaping and then about 1.5 inches of 2x2 rib up at the top. I finished this one on Friday. I have not started the second one yet, but I hope to finish it this week so that next week I have a fully finished pair of socks. But that is the first thing that's on and off my needles this week, even though I don't consider it a finished object because I have 2 feet, so I need 2 socks. But yeah, I absolutely love this. The fiber is 2-if by hand, and it's called Flowers and Football Tops, so I'm calling these my Flowers and Football Socks. So that is the first thing off the needles this week. Secondly, I spent quite a bit of time working on Krita this week. This is a free pattern from Knitty by Yarn Madness, and I am knitting in Yo-Yo Cash String Sport. It is a beautiful kind of lacy cardigan, which has an interesting lace pattern down that starts in the center and kind of adds on as it goes down, as you can see, and then actually even the back, it kind of diagonals into where it meets at the center of the back. So as you can see, I got a fair ways into the body. The deal is that I am knitting this in an indie dyed yarn. And with indie dyed yarns, it is often a good idea to use 2 balls at once so that if to alternate balls because sometimes one is slightly different colored than the other. This can be a difference in dye lot issues. It can also just be a difference in where it is in the dye pot. Sometimes one gets a little bit more color than another. So I have been alternating balls, particularly on the body, and I wanted to alternate balls on the sleeves as well. And so I was trying to decide when to knit the sleeves. I wanted to knit the sleeves early on because I don't want to run out of yarn because I'm a little close on yardage, but I also didn't want to have 4 balls of yarn attached to the sweater at a time. So what I ended up doing was I knit on the body until I ran out of the body balls. They're pretty much done. And then I used the 2 balls, and as you can see, I got my first sleeve done this week, which makes me very, very, very happy. It is a fairly fitted sleeve based on the pattern, but I think that blocking will open it up a little bit. It's kind of plain up top, and then you've got your lace motif down at the bottom. And on the advice of a friend, I actually ended up knitting the sleeve flat and then seaming it. That was because knitting with 2 balls of yarn in the round and getting the seam under the sleeve to not have all kinds of issues, I decided it was easier to knit them flat. That was I can't take credit for that. That was a suggestion from a friend at Knit Night, but it worked really nicely and I was very happy. with it. So my plan is to start on the second sleeve this evening, hopefully get a good way through it, and maybe have this done at the time of recording next week. I don't know if that's a little bit lofty, since as soon as I finish the sleeves, I will go back and add more to the body. I will be I'm probably just going to use everything I have. The cardigan was supposed to be a little bit long, and I really kind of like it long. But I don't know for sure yet. I will definitely have to see, but the body does need a little bit more because right now it's kind of a cropped sweater. So that is my progress on Krita, and I will be working on that this week. And like I said, I'm sort of hoping that I'll be done with it next week, because I would love to cast on some new things, but I just don't know if that's actually going to be... I lost a little bit. I just don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, so we shall see. So finally, the third project that got some attention this week is my Cozy Memories blanket. And again, this is actually not a knitting project, it's a crochet project, which is exciting because I don't do a lot of crochet, so it has meant some new skills for me. But I went ahead and added 9 more. And what happens is this is a attach as you go. So often what I do is I do the centers on their own and kind of bind them off and weave in the ends, and then I just have a whole stack of centers to add to the blanket, and I go ahead and add them to the blanket sort of all in one go, and when I have, I don't know, 20, 30 centers, I just sit down and kind of play with them and see what order I want to add them in. And so I actually have one more set that I didn't get to add in before I recorded today, but the new ones that I added are, this is Smushy in Happy Forest, that's Dream in Color. This is Art Yarns Merino, and I don't think it has a colorway, but it's this really cool, it's blues and brown. This is a bit of Shibui, which is sock yarn, and I don't know the colorway, but this was from the Loopy U, the little sock blocker kit. This was some Colonet Jitterbug, and I don't have the colorway name, but it came as a sample in a kit that I got. This is Woolmise Pure in the Hortensia colorway, which is Blue Forget-Me-Not, which I absolutely love. This was some Knit Picks Stroll in the Imagine colorway. It's their hand-painted stroll series. I think it's Stroll. It's their hand-painted series, and I used that for a baby sweater. This is Black Trillium Fibers. It's their sock in the colorway Ametrine, which is like a yellow, and it's got a little bit of, it's really hard to show these. It's yellow, and it's got a little bit of purple in it. And this is Malabrigo sock in the Stone Chat colorway, which is reds and browns. Gosh, these are just not showing up that well. And then this one is Dream in Color Smushy again, and this is in Summer Sky. So as you can see, I have a bit. I have decided that I'm going to continue on adding 3s until it gets as wide as I want it, and then I will just continue building on that. And it looks kind of like, to me, it looks a little bit like honeycomb, but I just love it. I am loving all these colors together, and I'm playing with where all the variegateds go versus the solids, and I am just having a great time. And actually, after the podcast last week, I put up a thread in the Ravelry group asking if anyone wanted to exchange minis, because I have quite a few balls that were, I had 40 or 50 grams left, and I don't want to put all of that in the blanket. And I had 3 or 4 people who responded and said they wanted to exchange. So I am doing those exchanges right now, and I'm super excited about those. Those are going to get dropped in the mail this afternoon. And I'm excited because I will have more different yarns to put in the blanket, and I want it to be super colorful. Unfortunately, that pretty much cleans me out for now, so I need to knit a few more things and have a few more balls of sock yarn before I can do more exchanges, but I will definitely be suggesting exchanges in the future, so if you're interested, keep an eye on the Ravelry thread. I also left it open if you have a sock blanket that you're working on, or you have a use for minis and you would like to try and exchange. I left the thread open, so anyone who's interested in exchanging, please feel free. free to post in the thread or contact other posters in the thread and see if they want to exchange with you, because the more the merrier. So that was my third and final, I say knitting, but I guess I'll have to add a crocheting section project for this week. So that brings me to spinning. Last week I showed you another bump of Mega Sal fiber. It was Hello Yarn Targhee in the You Can't Grow a Good Witch on Chalk colorway, which was some beautiful neutrals. And I finished it, although it is still quite wet, so this will definitely not be going up in the shop today because Targhee is really puffy and squishy. And as you can see, this end is a little bit drier. It is huge, and this is still the standard like 4.1 ounces. These are the colorways. It is just gorgeous. It is whites, peaches, a little bit of caramel color, a little bit of browns. My husband says he thinks it looks like cappuccino. I thought it looked like roasted marshmallows, but there are just so many beautiful neutral colors in here, and the monitor probably won't show you these. I will be taking some pictures probably tomorrow evening and posting them on my Flickr account. I'm sorry, on my Instagram account. And this one will be going in the shop. I expect it's going to be almost 400 yards, which is a new record for me. And it is just going to be squishy and fabulous. So this end is still quite wet, which is why it doesn't look as puffy as the rest of them, and I am still going to go back and let it dry some more. But this is You Can't Grow a Good Witch on Chalk, and Adrian is just a master of the neutrals. This is just so gorgeous, and not normally my colors, but I'm absolutely loving it. So that is that one, which brings me to what I will do next. I have a braid of Southern Cross fiber. It was a club braid in a new to me fiber to spin. I believe it is, let me just pull it up. It is Kent Romney lamb's wool top, and the color is Heart of Winter, and this was the January 2015 club, and it is a beautiful braid. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's got peaches and roses and mauves and lavenders and little pops of blue in there. And I think this is going to be an absolutely stunning braid. Romney is a longer wool, so while this is pretty soft, I mean, it's actually softer than I would have expected. It's probably not right up against the skin soft for those of us who are special snowflakes, so it will probably be great for outerwear. My suspicion is that it will be great for maybe mittens or even socks if your feet aren't super sensitive. So that is what I'm going to spin this week, and I will bring that back and show you next week. I have a few other Mega Sal fibers, and this is during the spin along, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with them yet, and so I hate to start spinning if I don't know what they're going to become, or whether I want to put them in the shop or keep them, or exactly what I want to do with them. So I'm going to take a brief break and spin a different kind of braid. So that is what I will be spinning this week. So that brings me to the end of my prepared content, but I did have a few questions from the Ask Me Anything thread in the Ravelry group. Again, if you have any questions for me, knitting or personal or other, please feel free to leave them in there and I will answer them on the podcast. I have two questions today. The first is from Yarnstormer, who is Laura Mihalski, and she has a great podcast called The Knit Shift. She's about 3 or 4 episodes in, but I would definitely suggest you check it out. She said, I have a question. How did you get into sample knitting for a local yarn store? The answer is, in some ways I sort of fell into it, and in some ways I ask for it. When I mentioned on last week's episode that I really got back into knitting when I was 25 or 26, and I found a beautiful local yarn store in Los Angeles. And after I had been there for about 6 months, they asked me if I would want to work a few shifts. And I was already working full-time, so I was mostly working like Wednesday knit nights and a couple weekend shifts. And one of the other things that they were looking for was people to knit samples. So when new magazines would come in, they'd say, look through the magazine, see what looks interesting to you and what some of our new yarns are, and just propose to us something that you'd like to knit, and you can knit the sample for it, and then we'll either pay you for it or we'll do trade for yarn. So I did quite a bit of that for the store in Los Angeles, which is sort of what started me on it. And also, if I needed a recommendation or someone to sort of verify my work, that's how I did that. When I first moved to Kansas City, the first thing that I did when I did not have a job and didn't know anyone was I went around to all the different knit stores and asked if they needed help. Like, could I apply for a position? And unfortunately, none of them were looking at that time. But I also asked if they needed any sample knitters, and I brought a few things with me to show my work, and this is also where Ravelry comes into play. These days, if I want to do any sample knitting for anyone, I say, please have a look at my portfolio of projects on Ravelry and see if anything that I have done would appeal to you, or just for examples of my work. I think if you have a nice portfolio on Ravelry of projects that you've done, that is likely to make someone interested in considering you for sample work because they see what kind of projects you can do. So I did do some sample work here in Kansas City for a couple of those local yarn stores. Again, for the most part, it was for in-store credit or yarn credit. Most of them do not particularly like to pay, I think because it's to do outgoing cash. I think often that's because they're a small business and they've got inventory, and so to do a cash outlay for sample knitting, that's just hard for them to do. So I think it's quite likely that you will find people who want to do it in trade for yarn or store credit towards yarn. So I did several of those. I actually haven't done much sample knitting in recent years, mostly because I've become more of a selfish knitter, and because I do some test knitting for designers, and I just always have a million projects on the go, so sometimes I just don't like to commit my effort to one particular project. However, you did notice that I knit the featherweight cardigan as a sample for a store. That honestly was just because I asked for it. I don't exactly know how I'm friends with the yarn store owner, but I am friends with her on Facebook. I assume it's a Ravelry connection. And I just don't remember how we became friends, but she posted on her store profile page that she was looking for some sample knitters. And would anyone be interested in knitting some spring sweaters for her shop? And this was probably about 8 weeks ago, and I was at sort of a lull in my knitting mojo. I had a couple of things on the needles, but I wasn't really feeling anything, and nothing had quite grabbed me, and I thought, you know, while I've got some downtime, while I'm not interested in knitting a million projects, while I don't have a whole bunch of babies to knit for, I might as well try it. So honestly, I just messaged her on Facebook and said, I am a sample knitter. I've done some sample knitting. Here's my profile on Ravelry. Please have a look at it and let me know what you think. And she got back to me within the next day or so. And it was kind of a long, I won't even say negotiation process, but it was a long sort of back and forth about what exactly I would knit and what yarns she wanted to use and what pattern I would use and those kinds of things. But that has now been sent back to her. I actually haven't heard back from her, but I'm hoping to this week. And I hope that she likes the sample, and that was also in trade for some yarn. I picked out something from her shop that she said she was going to send me once she received the sweater. So that is sort of kind of in a nutshell. So like I said, the first couple times I just asked for it. Laura, if you're interested in doing something, I would say go to your local yarn store and ask if they ever hire sample knitters that aren't store staff. You know, just if they're ever looking for sample knitters, and offer yourself up and see what happens. So, if you're interested in it. The second question that I got this week is from Iril, who I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She asked if I had any good tips for making iced tea. I've used a bit of baking soda and that works to get the tangy taste of the tea, but I haven't yet managed to make a really good pitcher of iced tea, so end up buying ready-made. when I make iced tea, for the most part, occasionally I will just brew a cup of hot tea and then I will pour it over ice. However, that does dilute it a little bit, so unless you're going to be drinking it pretty quickly, that's kind of hard. There are a couple tips that I have heard, and then I will also share with you what I do for a pitcher of iced tea. One of the tips that I have heard is to brew it twice as strong, or brew it with half the water, but all of the tea that you would normally use, and then when you pour it over ice, as the ice melts and it dilutes, it will get back to the strength that you want it. Now that's normally what I would do if I only have if I'm just doing like 1 cup for myself. To brew a tea, I actually bought this pitcher. It's called the Double Infusion Pitcher, and I bought it from the Republic of Tea, and I want to say it was maybe $29.99, $39.99. And it actually comes with another piece, which is in the freezer. It is a plastic core. It's basically just a it's just a cylindrical tube that fits in there, and it is ice in the plastic so that you don't have to use ice cubes, which will dilute it. So you can freeze the center section, and then you could put it in your tea if you wanted to serve it that way right away, and that would make it chilled right away. The way that I generally do, so the iced tea pitcher comes with a variety of things, and this is the infuser, which you can use for one of 2 things. You can either brew your iced tea and then you can put fresh fruit in here and infuse your tea with fresh fruit, or normally what I do is just brew the loose leaf tea in here. So normally what I do is this will hold either, oh, I can't even remember, 8 or 10 cups of water. So this will make a big pitcher of iced tea that will last me through the week. Normally what I will do is I will boil up maybe 4 to 5 cups of water, so about half of this. And then I will put in the full amount of tea into here. So I will measure out like 10 portions of tea in here. I can also do it with tea bags. If I don't want to use the center core, I can always use tea bags. And generally what I do is I brew up maybe half of this with a super strong blend of tea and blend it hot. And the pitcher is heat resistant, so I can pour my hot water, my boiling water right in here and brew the like 5 cups of double strength tea. Then what I usually put, if you're going to put sugar in your tea, I usually put it in when it's hot so that it will melt and kind of blend with everything. And then as soon as the tea is done brewing to the strength that I want, what I do is I put the pitcher under water and I fill it to the rest of the way with cold or lukewarm water, and then I stick it in the fridge immediately to chill it. So that's how I brew my iced tea, and I've never really had a problem with it. I will say that a lot of what I brew in here is going to be fruity blends, and I've been doing like green mixed with fruit lately. So if you wanted to brew like a really strong black tea, I haven't done that in here, so I don't know how it would taste. I know that people do use baking soda, although I have never done that. I just usually use regular tea, and I drink it. I try and drink it within about a week, because after that I find that it tastes stale, but it does keep it cold, and I just leave this in the fridge full of iced tea for any time that I want it. And it's got a little, when you're done with this piece, you can wash this, and then it's just got a little bit of it's got a lid that screws in that will keep it, and it's got an open and closed for the pour spout, which I'm sure you can't see, but so that is what I use for brewing my iced tea. So I hope that helps. I don't know if that will make a difference if you've already tried that. I do know that, I mean, it could be the specifics of your water. I don't know if you've tried using either bottled water or like if you're using water out of your tap. It probably depends on the water in your region. I noticed, I think you're in Norway, I think. So I wouldn't know if there's anything different about that. Like if you wouldn't have any different characteristics to your water that would make it taste different. So I think that is it. Thank you to Errol and Laura for your questions. I enjoyed answering them. I hope they helped you in some way. And thank you to everyone for spending this week with me. I look forward to seeing you next week. And I will say, as I always do, happy spinning, happy knitting, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.